Hi, everyone. My name is Mason Whiteside. I'm the Deputy Director of Public Policy and Advocacy here at the Arc of Texas. For those of you who have never worked with the Arc of Texas before, the Arc is a nonprofit organization. We're dedicated to promoting and protecting the human rights and self-determination of Texans with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The team that I work on, the Public Policy and Advocacy team, works with government, particularly the Texas Legislature, to develop and advocate for legislation and policy changes to help all those people with IDD and their families across the state of Texas. The Public Policy and Advocacy team needs the help of advocates in order to complete its job. We can't do it alone. And so I thought I'd talk to everyone at home today about what advocacy looks like with the Texas legislature. A legislative session is coming up. They happen on odd-numbered years from January to May. So we're about to get into the next one, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities to advocate to your legislators and all the members of the legislature on legislation that matters to all of us. I've got a presentation I want to share with you. I call it How to Get a Win in Austin. It's meant to show you some strategies about having effective meetings with members of the Texas legislature. But that does kind of beg the question, what is the Texas legislature? So the Texas legislature is the lawmaking body for the state. It's divided into two chambers. The lower house, the House of Representatives, which has 150 members. It's led by the Speaker of the House, Dade Phelan. The majority of members of that body are Republicans, and Dade Phelan is a Republican. The upper house is the Texas Senate. It's a smaller body, 31 members, the majority of whom are Republican, and it's led by the Lieutenant Governor of this state, Dan Patrick, who's also a Republican. What does the Texas legislature do? Why is it important to you? The Texas legislature creates state law that applies to everybody in Texas. It appropriates your tax dollars through the budget process. It administers state agencies like the Health and Human Services Commission, the Department of Family and Protective Services, the Department of Housing and Community Affairs, and numerous others. The legislature confirms gubernatorial appointments. When the governor wants to appoint someone to some position, oftentimes the Texas Senate will have to confirm that appointment. And every 10 years, the Texas legislature draws your electoral districts that determine who represents you in Congress, in the state house, and in the state Senate. The structure of the legislature is bicameral. So there's two houses, the House and the Senate, that essentially do the same thing. They mirror one another. In the House, like I mentioned, 150 members, one speaker who's the boss of the chamber, and 42 committee and subcommittee chairs. The Speaker of the House is elected at the beginning of each legislative session by a majority of members of the House. They have less power in their chamber than the Lieutenant Governor, but make no mistake, they're still the premier player in the House of Representatives. The Speaker of the House appoints committee chairs and the members of those committees, and he presides over the floor proceedings when votes are happening. Again, similar structure in the Senate. 31 members there and 27 committee chairs. The Lieutenant Governor presides over that chamber, but he himself isn't a senator. He runs the Senate. He has all the same powers as the Speaker of the House and more. And what's interesting about him is that he isn't accountable to the members of the Texas Senate like the Speaker is to the members of the Texas House. You and I choose the Lieutenant Governor when we go and vote in November. He is elected on the statewide ballot. So when you go and you cast your ballot for Lieutenant Governor in the November election this year, you'll be casting your ballot for who you want to run one house of the legislature. What do the two chambers do? Well, luckily, not much about lawmaking has changed since Schoolhouse Rock. The process for creating law through the legislative process that you probably learned in school still applies. The first step is introducing a bill. Any member of the state legislature can introduce a bill. They come up with the ideas themselves, or interest groups, trade associations, constituents can bring them ideas. They can develop them into laws, sign their name to them, and then move them through the process. The first step in that process is the committee. I took care to mention the number of committees in each chamber and who appoints the chairman of those committees, because this is a critical gate in the legislative process. The committee chairmen act as gatekeepers. They decide when their committees will meet, what those committees are going to consider, what those committees are going to vote on. And so this is a really important part of the legislative process. It's also an opportunity for advocacy. During committee hearings, typically there's going to be an opportunity for members of the public, like you and me, to go before these committees and speak to the members of the committee in an open session. This is a good opportunity to advocate for bills that you think are good, or testify against bills that you think are bad. Once a bill is voted out of committee, it goes to the whole chamber for consideration. This is where all 150 members of the House or all 31 members of the Senate will have the opportunity to vote on a specific bill that's been passed out of committee. Assuming that happens and the House or the Senate approve a bill, that bill then moves to the opposite chamber. So if it's passed off the House floor, it moves to the Senate. And if it's passed off the Senate floor, it moves to the House. And that whole process starts again. You have to find a member of the opposite chamber to introduce that same bill. It has to go through the committee in the opposite chamber and be voted off the floor in that second chamber. Once the bill has passed both chambers, gone through all 4 steps, then it leaves the legislature and it goes to the governor, who can either veto it or approve it. Why go meet with legislators? It's a fair question. Legislators probably aren't relevant to your day-to-day life, but individual legislators can have an enormous influence in legislative proceedings and the making of law and public policy. I can think of a couple of reasons why you'd want to speak with a legislator. One, to advocate for a specific legislative measure. I really like this bill, it's important to me, and I'd like to seek your support on it. I can think of if a member is a committee chairman, to go speak to them on that basis, to ask them to hear a bill in their committee. Or before the legislative session, to ask them to author a bill. If you have an issue in your bill, you need someone to submit or help you work and develop a bill, you can ask your member to author, sponsor, or co-author a specific bill. You might want to meet with a member of the legislature to bring awareness to a specific issue. If it's an issue that you're having and you want to make sure that members of the legislature, your representatives, are aware of the issue, that's a really good reason to come up to Austin or to go visit members in their districts and talk to them about an issue. Members really want to hear about citizens' personal experience with an issue. And you're going to be able to use your own subject matter expertise to advise them on that issue. They really rely on members of their communities to advise them about what the issues are in those communities. So bringing awareness to an issue is a really good reason, especially some of these members might not have experience with disability issues or issues with intellectual and developmental disabilities. They need people like us to bring these issues to them and inform them. The third reason why you might want to speak to a member of the Texas legislature is for help on an issue in the district, in your home where you live, if you don't live in Austin. Getting a response from a state agency, like the Health and Human Services Commission, that's been ignoring you. Help with receiving public benefits, navigating that, or getting them to attend an event in the district that your organization is putting on. Things like that. I can think of these 3 main reasons as being why you would want to talk to a member of the Texas legislature. So if any of those apply to you, next we have to have a meeting. I would say that there's a fairly specific etiquette to having meetings with legislators. The first thing you want to do is you want to find your elected officials. So based on where you live, you are going to have one House representative and one senator. I think you should start here. Even if your elected official doesn't chair the appropriate committee, or even if they're not on the committee, I think you should start with your elected official because they're accountable to you. Because you're a constituent of theirs, they're going to be obligated to meet with you and give attention to your issue. When you reach out to their capital office here in Austin or their district office in your city or county, there are typically four kinds of staffers that you're going to be able to meet with. These are the employees of your elected official. The first kind is capital staff. These are the staff who work in the member's capital office in Austin. Your capital staffers will typically include the boss of the office, the chief of staff, the second in command, the legislative director, and all the staffers who work on legislation, lawmaking, and public policy. Typically, these are going to be the ones that you want to talk to. The second kind are district staffers. These are staffers who assist with local issues. They don't live in Austin. They live in the member's district. And typically, they're going to have greater ties to the community. So district staff can be a good entree to meeting with the member or meeting with capital staff. Don't leave them out. The third kind of staff that you're going to be able to meet with are committee staff. Now, these staffers work for individual committees like the Appropriations Committee or the Health and Human Services Committee. They work for the chair of that committee. The chair is their boss. Committee staff are great because they have a lot of influence over what goes on in the committee. And typically they're going to have greater subject matter expertise. The committee staff for the Health and Human Services Committee probably knows more about Medicaid than your average staffer. So when you want to get into the weeds of public policy and lawmaking, committee staff are definitely someone you want to be reaching out to. The fourth kind, and this is more infrequent, are campaign staff. Typically, candidates for public office will hire people from their campaign. This means that they don't work for the state. They work for that member's campaign. It's a small distinction, but it's an important one. You probably don't want to talk to campaign staff on matters of public policy. Typically, they're not going to be informed on that. If you're trying to understand what a given candidate believes about issues that are important to you, or if you're trying to get them to come to your club's event, something like that, campaign staff is who you want to talk to. So once you've found out who your members are, once you've reached out to their capital or district office and set up a meeting, talk to one of these four kinds of staffers, the one that you most need to talk to. The third thing is you're going to want to get your materials together for the meeting. We don't want to waste time. And so we want to come to this meeting with as much information as possible. When coming up with these materials, make sure to have a specific ask, something that's both narrow, specific, and actionable. So don't ask them to fix huge, broad problems where the solution isn't really clear. That's going to be difficult for them to do anything on. I think that falls more into the raising awareness category. And if that's your goal, then that's fine. But in terms of advocacy on specific issues, we want something to be narrow and specific, and we want them to be able to do something about it. In your meeting, before you get there, I think you need to rehearse your talking points. I think this is a good way to make sure that the meeting stays on track and you get to talk about what you want to talk about. You want to be guiding the conversation. Think about questions that the committee staffers or that the legislative staffers may ask and come up with the questions in advance. Keep the meeting focused and on topic. Don't get off on tangents because it'll probably distract from the heart of the issue that you're wanting to get at. I always go into a meeting trying to get a specific answer. Does a member of the legislature support a given policy? Have they ever considered it before? something like that, something where the staff can give me a yes or a no answer, and I have something else to follow up on. Again, narrow, specific, and actionable. I think those are good guidelines to keep in mind. You should absolutely bring written materials, but keep them short. The one pager is a phrase that's often used in the Capitol. It is a one-page document explaining the issue, the background, and the solution. Typically, one-pagers are used to explain individual bills, but you can apply them to anything. The one-pager is a legislative staffer's and a legislative member's best friend. This allows them to quickly refer to the issue, jog their memory, remember what you talked about in the meeting. If you bring a lot of materials, it's possible that they might get lost in the mix and may never get read. And we don't want that to happen. I think in your written materials, you ought to emphasize your ties to your community. This is particularly effective when you're meeting with your elected official. You need to be able to demonstrate, or rather to be helpful to demonstrate, that you are not the only constituent experiencing this issue and that this is widespread among the people that they represent. The third thing I would recommend you do is use your resources at the Arc of Texas. On the next slide, I'm going to give you my name and my email, and I hope you reach out to me if you're thinking about getting in contact with your legislators. I am more than happy to help you. It's my job, and I love it. If you need help strategizing, coming up with what to talk about, scheduling meetings, drafting written resources, I'm here in Austin. I can go to the Capitol. I can help you come up with everything that you might need to have an effective meeting. I'm serious about that. If you're ever unsure in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. It would be my pleasure to help you out. As promised, I'm Mason Whiteside. That's my email, mwhiteside@thearcoftexas.org. I hope you reach out to me. I hope to hear from you. And I hope we have a good legislative session. Thanks for watching.